Hello dear viewers. In this representation I will describe the process of server hardening. Server hardening is one of the most important steps for securing our assets, particularly internet facing servers. I have rented a server from a cloud infrastructure company. This is my virtual private server or Ubuntu. This is my VPS and its operating system is Ubuntu 18.04. Let's jump in. I log in as this user account, and as you see, this is a passphrase for RSA key. I log in with authentication keys, not with login. So that's all. We are in the server with this user account, and these are warnings that I have created using banners, known as banners in Ubuntu server. As always, whenever we are logging into our server, it is a good idea to update the server. As you see, it asks me for a password, and this is the second password. This is another password, and the first password was indeed a passphrase for this RSA key, and this is the second, and this password make our server extremely secure. That's all, and right now the server is updating, and let's check the steps that I take for securing the server or server hardening. First of all, I do not log in with root user account, which is a default user account for all of the Linux server. I have created a simple user account using this simple command, sudo add user minus, for example, new user. Whenever you are, for example, in the server, you can create a new user, and this command is indeed a command from eCrypt FS facility. Previously I have installed eCrypt facility, and right now I can create a new user that its home is encrypted. And because I have created, I don't need to use a new user. Let's check how I assigned full sudo privileges to this user account. With this command we can jump into the sudoers file, and this is the command that I assigned all sudo privileges to my user account, as all equals to all equals to all. That means all of the sudo privileges I have assigned to this particular user account. After you have created such a user account with full sudo privileges, it is a good idea to log in with that user account and lock the root user account, because as I said before, when we log in via root user account, indeed we expose our server to lots of malwares, internet malwares like botnets, like internet worms and so on. So for locking the root user account, always use this command, sudo passwd -l root, and I have done this before, so I don't do it right now. Another good place to check for the security is checking whether your server receives security updates or not, security upgrades. Security upgrades are also known as unattended upgrades. You must receive via apt repository, and I go to etc directory, apt directory, apt-conf.d directory. Let's check what is inside this directory. As you see, there are lots of files. Two important files are this one, 50 unattended upgrades, and this one, 20 auto upgrades. Let's jump to 20 auto upgrades. This command, as you see, apt periodic update packages is set to 1. If yours is set to 0, ensure that set it to 1, and this one also unattended upgrade. These two simple commands ensure that your server receives security updates from apt repository. Another important file in this directory is this one, 50 unattended upgrades. In this file I have set this one, unattended upgrade automatic reboot set to true. After typically after your server receives periodically receives security updates, your server needs to reboot, and this command ensures that your server reboots automatically without your need. And that's it for here. And another issue for securing server is installing firewalls. Before going to describe firewalls, let's check another useful commands that it is better for us to check always. When you go to etc directory, there is a file known as passwd there. Let's check it, what is inside this file. As you can see, this file includes all of the user accounts that exist on your server. Sometimes it is a common method for hackers to use user accounts with default or weak passwords, or sometimes they create a user account and via that user account they access your server and access the files of your server. In this file you can see lots of user accounts like man user account, like sys user account. These are default and system user accounts that the server uses. The issue that we need to notice is that always focus on user account with the codes. This is the code of the user account. From 1,000 that are more than 1,000 or 1,000. As you can see, this other user account, for example SSHD user account, is 109. We do not focus on these user accounts, only focus on the user accounts that have codes more than 1,000 or 1,000, like this 1,001, 1,000, and this one 1,002. These are these user accounts that do not belong to the system. For example, MySQL also has a user account, but its code is 114. And delete any user account in here that has a code more than 1,000 and is unfamiliar to you, because that user account may create vulnerability for your server. Also, I have installed we have 4 types of firewall in Linux servers. One is IP tables, another one is NF tables that we must install, and another more developed firewall that mostly used for Red Hat Linux distribution like CentOS 7 is Firewall D. I have installed and configured IP tables is installed for all of the Linux by default, and I have configured IP tables as you can see, these are all the rules that I have configured my IP tables. You can search Google for configuring and structure, how to configure this one. Another firewall that I installed is NF tables. NF tables is similar to IP tables, but it ensures security more. Another important thing for ensuring security of your server is to ensure about the passwords, security of the passwords. In this way, you eliminate the chance for the hackers to access, for example, user account via weak passwords. One of the good facilities in Linux, particularly Ubuntu, is PW quality. You must install, for example, this one, sudo apt install PW quality. I have installed it before, and configure it. Again, you can use Google on how to configure this file. PW quality. after you install pwquality, you must edit pwquality.conf file, and this is the file. You can create minimum length for your password. This is 19, and this is a very good facility for ensuring that there are no weak password in your system. You can set all of these commands using the Google, and another good facility that you can install is also pamtali 2 facility on Ubuntu, and pamtali 2 is also a very good file for ensuring the security in your system. etc pam.d, and ls-l to see what is inside. We are interested in login file. Let's check what is inside this. And, this one is also very good file. You can configure it with the help of Google, and all of these issues ensure the strength of the passwords of your system, strength of your system, and so on. Another issue that we will take into the consideration is indeed hardening SSL or TLS. SSL stands for Secure Socket Layers, and Open SSL facility that is installed in Linux relates to this nice protocol SSL. For hardening SSL, actually SSL is the name of the this protocol first that it was created. Later it changed to Transport Layer Security, or TLS. That is the same protocol, but it is updated. Its updated is indeed TLS. In order to ensure that our server encrypts the communications with the most up-to-date TLS protocols, we must check this file. These are mostly links. And let's check. Yes, this file ssl.conf, you must scroll this file until you receive this line: SSL protocol all, and ensure that your file contains this minus or dash SSL v3, this is one of the most recent and up-to-date SSL protocols, and it's a newer version, or minus TLS v1, and also minus dash TLS v1.1. Always consult Google for recent TLS protocols and ensure that your system use up-to-date SSL protocols. In this way, you are ensured that your system is more secure. Another thing is SSH hardening. SSH hardening, for example, this device PuTTY that is connected to my server uses SSH protocol, and securing and hardening SSH protocol ensures that your connection to server is completely encrypted and secure. We have a very good website that we can use for checking HTTPS SSH check.com, and this is a very nice website that you can use this, and when you enter your IP address of your server, the IP address of your server, and the port of your SSH, it will give you the best recommendations about the security of SSH that you are using. Let's check one of the most important files in Linux for security and hardening. This important file is called sshd-config. In Ubuntu, its name is this. I think in CentOS also is the same name. This is the port of SSH. All of the configuration in this file are related to the security of SSH protocol. And in these lines, cifers and cakes algorithm and Mac, I use the, for example, cifers AES, or advanced encryption system with the number 128 CTR. I used this website recommendation about the choosing which ciphertext or which MAC to use. When you enter the IP address of your server, it will check your server's algorithm and give you the best recommendation. And in this file I have used this. Another nice issues that I have used, for example, this log level equals to verbose I used from Linis scanner recommendation that later I will describe. Permit root login. I set it to no. That means with the root user account you cannot log into this server. This is the maximum authentication tries when one person tries to connect and fails. Maximum is maximum two sessions, and this one authorized key files As I said at the beginning of this representation, I used a key. I use PuTTY keygen to create a public and private keys, RSI keys, and with the help of these keys, I authenticate via PuTTY and SSH. And this is the location of the key that I have put, the public key that I have put into my server. And the private key is of course located in my personal computer. And this one is password authentication. I set it to no. Means whenever a person wants to connect to this server, it must use the key authentication. It cannot log in via password. And this is also, I disabled agent forwarding, X11 forwarding, tunneling. These are the facilities in internet facing server that everybody can use these facilities to use, for example, for malicious activities. I have disabled this in order to secure my server. Also, this recommendation, compression, TCP alive, use DNS are Linux this recommendation that later I will describe. This is the location of the banner, that SSHD banner, this file I have created, and this is the SFTP for connecting, for example, via FileZilla. I have used this one because this is a tiny server and I only use it. I set it to SFTP server. This one again is some kind of facilities that everybody can use on internet, and I have disabled them. Allow TCP forwarding, allow stream local forwarding, and gateway ports, permit tunnel, all of this set to 9, so set to no. Also allow the only user account that is allowed to connect via SSH protocol, I have set it to NEMA. This user account that I am currently using. Other user accounts cannot connect via PuTTY to my server. And this is the main procedure for securing SSH, SSL, and also always I ensure myself that every user account can access only its own files. For example, this user account cannot access other user accounts file. And in Ubuntu it is very simple. I use this command. I set it to 700, means every user account owns its own home directory. For example, this user account cannot access other user accounts. And that's it. I have done it, and it will secure my server. Another facility that is mostly recommended for hardening your server is using App Armor software, and also SE Linux or security enhanced Linux facilities. Because I am living in a country with some special circumstances, I didn't use SE Linux because my country doesn't have good relation with outside, so only I used App Armor. And App Armor is a facility that have two modes, complain mode and enforce mode. It enforces the processes to work only on their area. For example, a malicious process prevents a malicious process to ruin your server, and it will limit the damage in the cases of the for example, when your server is under attack. And you can use the AA stands for App Armor, and this is a status. Yes, as we can see, this is the status, and I didn't enforce, I didn't complain, and but it is active. Three processes are in enforce mode, and it is active on my device. If, for example, one failed login, one, for example, hacker wants to hack my system, it will create a log file in and reports about that failures. As you can see, App Armor module is loaded, and these are the processes of App Armor. Another very useful facility, as I have said, is SE Linux. When you activate, when you use these facilities, the hardening factor of your server increases. Another good facility that is always recommended to use is Audit D facility in Linux servers. Audit D creates audit and creates log files for every activities that you define on your computer, on your server. For example, I have installed and I have configured Audit D, and also I have audited some files, and you can see via this command which files I have audited. Yes, I have audited password file that I have shown you before, and any password changes will create a log, and later I will be informed about that activities. So that's all. One of the most important, again, after SSHD config file in hardening is kernel hardening in Linux server, and also using Linux. Let's check what is Linux and what it did for me. I want to introduce Linux and show its important role in server hardening and securing Linux servers. Linux is used only for Linux server, not Windows servers. We can install Linux with these commands: sudo apt install Linux. But this command from apt repository doesn't install, unfortunately, the latest version of Linux. I have downloaded Linux from sysofy and transfer it to my server via FileZilla before, and I installed download page for Linux. Linux is very important and very useful. Also, it is open source, and it has, of course, a premium that has some price, but its open source is also very incredible for securing our server. Let's jump into Linux and see what Linux can do for us in order to secure our server. There is very nice comment in here if I find it. Linux audit, this command is used only for downloaded version. If you install it via that command, sudo apt install Linux, there is another command for scanning our system. Linux audit system. And that's all. Linux scans our server and give its own recommendation about how can we improve the security of our server. Unfortunately, as I said before, this is very tiny server with 50 gigabytes, and therefore I didn't install lots of these helpful security facilities like file to ban, like depth sums, and so on. I only installed the required, and this is the boot and services. As we see, these Linux check all of these processes, and whenever we see a green bar, it means it is okay. Whenever we see a white bar, means it is not installed or it is disabled. The problem exists when we see a red bar like none. That means we must install somehow in order to increase the hardening factor and increase the security of our server. As I said, I didn't install all of the recommendation because of the volume of my server and also the place that I live in my country. Some of these I don't know whether they have problem or not, but I didn't install because they are mostly related to United States of America standards, and of course they don't work in my country, and I was worried because of dysfunctioning of my website and myself. So memory and processes are all green. PAM configuration font, this is the PAM tally that I described. Lots of the things. This is shells. This is file and system. Mostly I didn't install file integrity tools or softwares because I didn't need. As you see, Linux check all of the steps, like bind 9. Bind 9 is a DNS. Indeed, that if we want our server also act as a DNS server, we must configure bind. It is a little complicated, but later I will describe that also. Checking apt package database, as we see it is okay. Networking. Firewalls, I have installed lots of firewalls. There are some unused rules that related to IP tables. I didn't fix it, but later I will fix. These yellow ones means there can be improved. There are some suggestions that can improve this issue. For example, web servers, I didn't install Nginx in this server, and also another firewall I didn't install yet. This is for SSH. As you can see, mostly are green, and my SSH support was okay. As I show you, I used the website SSH check, and it is very good working. Database, I installed MySQL and PHP. Logging files related to audit D and some other insecure services. There is absolutely no insecure services in my server. And about banners, we can configure banners in issue.net file in etc directory, and also mod t file. It's written that my contents are weak a little. I didn't care about the contents. Cryptography, again, there is a file that we can improve the default cryptography of our server to standards like FIPS or some other standards, and it will improve these PRNGs and pseudo random for cryptography, but I didn't install. Later maybe I install. Security frameworks, as I said, I didn't install say Linux. It is very important, say Linux. These two, Tomoyo Linux and GR Security, is also important. Only I didn't install these three, but I installed App Armor. This is a security framework as well as say Linux. Mostly these two are famous, App Armor and say Linux. These two are most important and famous security frameworks for our server. And software and file integrity, as I said, I didn't install file integrity, but it is already okay because I installed 8 or IDE IDS or intrusion detection system. There are multiple intrusion detection systems like Snort that we can use in for securing our Linux server, but I didn't install Snort and many other. Only I installed 8 IDE. Software malware, I have installed LMD that later I described, and ClamAvi and Rootkit Hunter also. And this one is very important. Whenever we want to secure a server, we must take care about this issue. Kernel hardening is one of the most important parts in server hardening, and as you can see, all of the bars are green except one, and that is also good, I think, but mostly are green because I performed kernel hardening on this server. And malware scanner and compiler, and these are the suggestions that Linux give us for improving the security and impact server hardening factor. As you see, this is 50 suggestions from Linux, and all of them are very valuable. They increase absolutely the security of our server, and whenever we implement these suggestions, it will be eliminated from this area. Unfortunately, I didn't implement lots of these suggestions. Later maybe I implement, and without all of these, let's check how much is our server hardening factor. This is here. Hardening index for my server is 74. If I had more volume or more better condition, of course it could be until 90, but this is okay for me. And also, whenever we implement these suggestions from Linux, it improve highly. The hardening factor will improve highly. For example, for again that PRNG pseudo random number generator I must implement in order to have a good pseudo random for cryptography, and also some other tools for automation, for file integrity, and so on. And this is for Linux, and it's valuable help for us whenever we want to harden a server. There are some other issues that I will describe. So until now we have reviewed some steps that can help us to harden and improve the security of a Linux server, particularly Ubuntu 18.04 server. And as a final discussion, it is always a good idea to test our security project that we have created with Kali Linux. Kali Linux is a very efficient device. For example, in my laptop or my personal computer, I can install Kali Linux on VirtualBox, and inside the Kali Linux we have very good facilities for scanning a remote server. For example, my server is on cloud, on internet cloud, and I can scan it from my local laptop with facilities in Kali Linux. Facilities like Nikto, like W3AF, like OpenVAS. OpenVAS is one of the most important vulnerability scanners in Kali Linux. We must a little configure it, and then we must enter IP address of remote server, and it will check the server, and it will report any vulnerabilities, any security holes that may exist in our server, and we can improve the hardening our server more. And for a final discussion, it is a good idea that I introduce the references that I read before hardening my server. This is one of the most important books. It is a PDF, Linux Security and Hardening by Donald Tewalt, by Donald A. Tewalt. This one is official guide for Ubuntu servers. This one, installing LAMP, including Apache, MySQL, and PHP on Linux server, by Eric Rosbrook. And one of the most efficient books that I must always emphasize is Ubuntu server 18.04, Administrating Ubuntu, by J. LaCourix. I don't have right now in my archives to show it, but it is a very efficient book written by J. LaCourix. Everything I learned from administrating Ubuntu Server 18 is written there. And that's all. I hope I can add a little knowledge, and my video can help you for securing and hardening your server. Later I may create another video for administrating, including installing LAMP and securing a website and HTML and PHP. There is a simple command for LAMP that installs Apache, MySQL and PHP together, and that is more efficient than installing one by one. For example, installing Apache, MySQL and PHP. Okay, have a good time. Goodbye for now.